All right, Danny, are you ready?
Ready for what?
Bag Lab.
We're interrupting the show for a special report because now it is time for Bag Lab.
All right, today's Bag Lab, I wanted to demonstrate how to make a side pocket for a bag that closes with a cord lock and some cording. So I've had this request in the past, and this particular demonstration will work if you're working on a bag that has a side panel, like a separate side panel. So I created 3 printable templates as sort of a guide. I'll have Danny switch to the overhead camera so I can start explaining what the templates look like. So I created 3 sizes of templates for a side pocket. This will depend solely on the size of your, kind of the width of your side panel of whatever pattern that you're working on, and also the height of the finished height of the pocket that you'd like to have. So feel free to make adjustments if your side panel is a little bit different size than either of these 3 examples. I'll just talk about the size large one, which is the one I'm going to be using for today's demonstration. So this particular pocket will work for a side panel that measures 5.5 inches, just because the bottom edge of my pattern piece measures 5.5 inches unfinished. And I have a few pieces of fabric that you'll need to cut out. You'll need, I'll start from the bottom, I guess. You'll need a piece of nylon or cotton cording that's either 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter in thickness. And I went ahead before I cut, because this was from yardage, before I cut this off. Actually, Danny, would you mind zooming in? Before I cut this piece off from the yardage, I went ahead and wrapped some Scotch tape around it, and then cut through it after, just so I could prevent this from fraying. So you need the cotton cording. You'll need either a single cord lock or a double cord lock. You'll just want enough space for the cording to go through. Actually, you'll need 2 layers of the cording to go through. Here's my pattern piece all cut out. You'll be cutting that out to the outside of the thick black line. You'll also need 2 pieces cut from the ripstop, and all the information is on this piece. I use 64 GSM weight of ripstop, which I've used in the Miss Flower water bottle tote as well, this particular weight. You'll need 1 piece of lining fabric cut from your pattern piece. You'll need a piece of exterior cut from your pattern piece with shape flex attached to the back. And you'll also need whatever side panel you're working from, whatever pattern. You'll need the side panel attached to the interfacing, which I have here. And this is obviously not a whole entire side panel. I just cut enough so that you could see visually how we're going to be attaching that at the end. Okay, so we're going to start off by working with the ripstop. So you should have 2 pieces of ripstop. They look the same on both sides. So I'm going to place them right sides together and pin along the short ends. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and before I do, I'm going to make some marks on it with my ruler. And I'm going to measure 1.25 of an inch up from the bottom edge and make a mark. And I'm going to do the same thing from the top. I'm going to measure 1.25 of an inch down from the top edge and make a mark. Okay, so we're going to be sewing this particular piece using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to use my regular stitch length, so on my machine that is 2.5 millimeters. I'm going to sew down from the top edge, and I'm going to stop sewing where the first 1.25 inch marking is. I'm going to back stitch, and then I'm going to pick it up at the second marking and then sew back down to the bottom, and that, again, that's going to be 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now, overhead please, thank you. Now we're going to press the seam open. And I'm just going to finger press, I just didn't want to have extra things on the table with my iron today. I'm going to finger press the seam open, and then I'm going to bring the fabrics so that they are raw edges aligned. Now before we do that, keep that finger press, and we're going to stitch, top stitch to either side of the seam 1/8 of an inch away, and as you can see the center is open because we left that opening unstitched. So we'll have 2 lines of stitching, each 1/8 of an inch away from the seam line. Okay, so now we're going to fold this wrong sides together so that both of the long edges meet. I'm going to add some wonder clips just to hold the lower edge. And we're going to stitch this lower edge using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So again, we're stitching just these raw edges together. Okay, now go ahead and take out your pieces that you cut from the pattern piece. And we're going to start by taking out the exterior piece attached to the inner facing. And I'm just going to flip this piece. I'm going to center it so you'll have a little bit of overhang of the ripstop on either side. And the top raw edges will be aligned. So I'm just going to put a couple wonder clips to hold this in place. And then we're also going to add directly on top the lining. So I cut my lining from a solid so it looks the same on both sides, but you want to put the right side of the lining face down. So again, you want your right side face down, and I'm going to add it to the wonder clips. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to be sewing with the wrong side of the exterior face up on the bed of my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch just this top pinned edge using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm going to flip the fabrics so that my 2 pocket pieces are wrong sides together. I'm going to use some wonder clips just to hold the bottom edge. And I'm just going to finger press. If you prefer, you can take your iron and press the fabric instead. I'm just going to finger press for this particular demonstration. I'm going to take this back over to the sewing machine. I'm going to be stitching on top of the pocket fabric, so this darker blue fabric. And I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of this darker blue fabric from one end to the other, and I'm going to increase my stitch length to 3 millimeters for this top stitching. Okay, you can go ahead and leave the wonder clips on the bottom edge for now. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw a horizontal line on top of the ripstop. The line is going to be 1/2 inch down from the top edge, and actually I'm going to draw this line using some chalk. Okay, so now go ahead and take out your cording, and I'm going to be using a bodkin for this. You can also use a safety pin if you prefer. I just like the bodkin. It's a little bit, I find it to be a little bit more reliable for this. So the metal just pushes down and it holds the cording in place so that it doesn't come out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and thread that through. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to cut this into two separate pieces. And I'm going to pin it in place, the cut end, so that it doesn't shift. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other half. Okay, I'm going to wonder clip this in place as well, and then remove that bodkin. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to do two things. First off, I'm going to stitch the cording down so that it doesn't pull through the ripstop. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to top stitch on top of that 1/2 inch line that we drew, and that will form a casing so that the cording stays near the top of the ripstop. Now we're going to attach this piece to the side panel. Again, this is for whatever pattern you're working on, and the side panel should fit the bottom edge of your pocket piece. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the bottom edge so that it's aligned, and I'm also going to bring the side edge of the pocket piece so that it matches the side edge of the side panel that we're attaching it to. And this will give the top edge and the center of the pocket a little bit of a lift. And again, you might need to modify the printable pattern pieces so that they'll work with the project that you're working on. And an easy way to do that is just to take the pattern piece and either add to the place on the fold area or decrease that area as well. And you can also decrease or increase the height of the pocket if you need something a little bit different. So this is what it looks like once it's pinned together, and I'm going to go ahead and sew the pinned edges 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric. Okay, so this is what that looks like. And last thing we need to do is insert the cording into the cord lock. So you want to make sure the pieces have some Scotch tape on them just to make it easier to insert. And then this is what it will look like once the cord lock is in place, and you can certainly increase the length of the cording if you'd like, depending again on the size of your pocket. And then you'll proceed with whatever pattern you're working on, and this will just get sewn into the seams. But I think this is a great option for, especially if you'd like to cinch your pockets, make them more secure, or just add a little bit of a different visual interest to some of your projects. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration for adding the corded pocket to the sides of your bag.